welcome to another broadcast of Majoring in the Majors on the Artist First Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. You can find them at artistfirst.com. Your host, Pastor S.J. Munson, is the author of two books, The Treasure of Israel and Christ Held Hostage, The Hijacking of Christianity. Find them wherever great books are sold. Now, here he is, your host, Pastor S.J. Munson.
Hi, this is S.J. Munson, and welcome to Majoring in the Majors. We live in a digital age where technological advances occur with lightning speed. Technologies like AI are developing at an incredible and alarming pace. Mental health experts are only beginning to study the effects of technology on child development. And if you're a parent or an educator, you know the challenges you face to keep up with the latest advances in order to keep your children safe. And how do we teach our children to be responsible consumers of technology, to be able to distinguish real news from deep fakes, for example? In short, how do we teach them to become good digital citizens? Tonight we have as our guest Diana Graber. She's the author of a book that could be described as the manual for parents and teachers. It's called Raising Humans in a Digital World, Helping Kids Build a Healthy Relationship with Technology. She's also the founder of CyberWise and Civics, two very influential organizations devoted to digital literacy. She has developed and teaches Civics, the popular digital literacy curriculum, in schools across the U.S. and internationally. And this curriculum has been recognized as an Innovation in Education finalist by Project Tomorrow and the OC Tech Alliance. Diana has also been an adjunct media psychology professor and is the recipient of the 2017 Media Literacy Teacher Award. She has appeared on and has been interviewed by the Today Show, NBC Nightly News, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and more. She presents widely about kids and technology, and we're very fortunate to have her here on the show. Diana Graber, welcome, and thanks for making time for us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, a lot of parents, I would say I probably speak for most, feel that technology has kidnapped our children. As parents, we often feel irrelevant or powerless in combating the power of digital technology. But in the introduction to your book, you encourage parents that raising good and kind human beings is still in our hands. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think, absolutely. I don't want to hear that parents feel challenged or stressed out by this, because we have to remember that, whatever tools we're worried about today, there's going to be new tools tomorrow. And then after that, there's going to be new tools. Technology always changes. But what does not change is human behavior. And so I think it helps if parents remember that our job is to teach kids to be good, kind, thoughtful, ethical people, whether they're online or off. And hopefully, if we instill those very human-like values or traits, they'll take that into the online world and be able to deal with whatever new technology comes their way.
Now, like a lot of parents, my conversations with my teen, I have a teen in high school, conversations about technology tend to focus on the risks.
Right.
When we have to patrol their history, we read their texts, because that's part of being a good parent, right? But there's a lot for parents to be fearful of. But you say there's a whole digital world out there that can be used for good and to even change the world for the better. And let me just quote one quote from your book. It's high time, you say, we set our fears aside and get to the task of empowering youth to use technology well. How do we teach our kids when we ourselves feel so poorly equipped or armed or even overwhelmed?
Well, that's why I'm such a big advocate of digital literacy being taught in the classroom of education, starting super young. I think it's really important to teach kids, students, how powerful these tools are and how they work and what you can do to use them in really great, powerful ways that will enhance your digital reputation and everything else. And we really don't do that. And I think that that's why we see a lot of problems when kids get older. And especially, we're in this era right now where everything's being banned or cut off and we want kids off of everything until they're a certain age. Well, that may solve the problem short term, but it's not really instilling the kind of skills and lessons they need in order to use these things well. And so I think there's a way to scaffold these skills when the kids are very young, teach them what it means to be a good, kind person offline, then slowly transition to show them how to relay those same skills and values online, and then teach them how everything works. Teach them what misinformation is, and teach them what the impacts of cyberbullying are, and all of that stuff, encompasses a really broad and important digital literacy curriculum that our kids aren't getting. And I think that will change a lot. I think that could really preempt a lot of the problems that we're seeing when kids get older and they don't have that kind of preparation or education. I just think we're really failing the next generation by not teaching them how to use digital tools well.
Now, you call your curriculum Cyber Civics. How did you come up with that title? What's the significance of it? And how did you get involved in general in teaching this area?
Well, it's kind of a funny story. My background's in media and television and all that. And so I went back to school when my kids were approaching middle school to get a master's degree in media psychology. At the same time, my own children's school experienced its first cyberbullying event, and the principal was like, I don't even know what to do about this. So I asked him if I could, apply what I'd been learning and talk to other experts to start teaching what I just talked about in the classroom so that we can preempt problems like that in the future. And he said, absolutely, can you start tomorrow? At the time, the school where my kids were at, had a block of classes called Civics, and it was like old-fashioned civics lessons. And we just dusted it off, called it Cyber Civics, and made it into our digital literacy block. So the name kind of was happenstance that we ended up with that name. But I really love it now because it is civics. It's learning how to be a citizen of the world. And today our world is largely a digital world. So I think it was really lucky that I got that name because I think it really still works today.
I was at an informal meeting that our high school principal has. It's open to the community. It's an opportunity for parents to come and voice concerns, ask questions, and interact with the educators and staff. I was actually the only parent on that particular day who was there, and the rest were teachers and staff. And everyone except the principal and I was on their phone. Heads down, staring intently at their screens. And I thought, really? This does not bode well for our students. We're supposed to be having a meeting here, But when I mentioned my concern, I didn't say anything about that. But when I mentioned my concern that internet addiction among students is a real problem and we need to curtail the use of phones in the classroom, suddenly all the heads popped up like a prairie dogs. And one teacher said, "Oh, are you referring to us?" Like I'd caught them, looking at their phones. You talk about that in your book, how, we're concerned about our children's addiction to screens, but we ourselves are also, addicted to them. How does that affect how we teach our children and how they develop?
I mean, kids look to adults to figure out how to be adults themselves, and what they see are adults everywhere staring down at screens. So it's no surprise that that's what kids do too, because that's what they've seen their whole lives. That's what we model. So, I mean, it's a vicious circle, right? Yeah. So that's, again, I go back to digital literacy in the classroom. What we teach the kids through cyber civics is, why are you looking at your screen? Well, here's all of the persuasive technology techniques that the companies use to grab and hold on to your attention. And so we teach them how it works and why they do it and why you can't walk away and the dopamine hits you get and all of that. And that's super powerful because then the student starts to realize, gosh, it's not my fault. It's not even my parents' fault that we're always looking at our screens. These companies are more powerful than our brains. And so we're captive. And unless we understand that that's happening, we're powerless against those mechanisms. So, knowledge is power. Kids love learning about this because, number one, it makes them mad. They're like, well, that's not right. I don't like someone capturing my attention. And number two, it makes them learn that they do have the ability to put it down and walk away. So, I can't solve the problem of every adult looking at their phones, but I can advocate for teaching kids to hopefully turn it around and do better for the next generation.
At what age does your curriculum start?
Well, we start in fourth grade. We have a curriculum for fourth and fifth graders called Digital On-Ramps. And it's really my favorite. There's really cute little videos with our mascot, who's an owl. But the whole idea of digital on-ramps is to start with values. So we cover all the different values: kindness, honesty, respect. And we show what it means in the real world. And then the next lesson shows how to apply that value online. So I love that section of digital on-ramps. And then we go into, how does the internet work? How does search work? Just the mechanisms. And then we go into things like how to detect false information or images that have been AI generated. And then there's a whole section on online safety, keeping safe from cyberbullying and scams, predators, all of that. And then there's a little introduction to artificial intelligence. So that's fourth and fifth, and then it moves on to middle school.
As you say in your book, screens are everywhere, obviously, and they're here to stay. They're not going away. So we have to deal with it. But how do we give our kids this foundation to be responsible screen users? Do you have any tips?
Yeah, it all starts with social emotional skills. I mean, there's no surprise that I called my book Raising Humans in a Digital World, because that's our job as parents. We have to raise good humans, or at least hopefully that's what we want to do. And that starts with making those eye-to-eye connections, face-to-face connections, learning how to be a human in the real world, understanding that when I hurt someone's feelings, they look sad on their face or they might cry. All of that gives children a really great foundation for understanding how to use technology when they get older, when they can't see someone else's face, when it's hard to remember that there's a real person behind every screen, when they don't really get yet what the impact of what they write or say might be on that person. So, laying that foundation starts day one, face-to-face communication with the children when they're really little, less time in front of a tablet, more time in front of a parent.
Before high school, my teenager went to a private school and had limited contact with media. No, obviously, phones were not involved at all, and some contact with computers. But she also had a special phone that we had given her, designed for preteens or young teens to keep them safe. No social media, limited internet. Texts were monitored and so forth. And despite the almost constant complaints from our teen, it was actually working pretty well. Then came the first day of public high school, and one teacher says, okay, everyone take out your smartphones and take this quiz online. And another says, scan this QR code and do the homework. And the coaches say, download this social media app to stay in touch with the practice and game announcements. And my teen calls home in a panic. I need a smartphone. And I thought, give me a break. We need to be all on the same team here. And I realized not only are we fighting the digital kid culture, but we're now fighting the educational system that relies on access to social media and the internet. And I thought, can't we all just work together? We realized that the teachers were not only assumingly unaware of what we were facing as parents, but they were also part of the problem, and treating our adolescents like they were adults whose frontal lobes were fully developed. At least, the teachers were acting as if all the students were responsible adults who have been taught how to safely negotiate the online world. So you're talking about, starting early with kids back in the fourth grade. What about kids who, have had, limited nurturing in terms of how to handle media, and all of a sudden they're thrown into in high school they're thrown into this need to have all these different apps, and most of them, my child included, were not ready for it.
The one thing about our curriculum is it's taught entirely without devices, largely. Well, for sure in fourth and fifth grade. And then in middle school, a lot of the lessons, you don't need to even pull out technology to learn the lesson. So it's great for those schools that really don't want to be on technology, which is where we're going with education today. But you bring up a really important point. We kind of are all over the map on this, because on one hand, we read every day about schools banning technology in the classroom, getting rid of the computers. We want kids to be 16 before they're on social media and all that. And then on the other hand, schools are putting computers in the classroom or requiring kids, like you just say, to access things with their cell phones. So we kind of have to decide where we're at on all this. And frankly, it's confusing to kids because we're giving them mixed messages. I mean, are we in or are we out?
Yeah.
Where are our limits? Where are our limits not, And I think we got to straighten that out before AI really comes at us. I mean, it's already here, but still with AI, we're not really preparing kids with AI literacy lessons. Yet so many of the lessons they're doing, if they're on computers or in school, are using AI, but we're not even teaching them what AI is. So you're right. We're all over the map when it comes to education.
Yeah, now you say in the book there's one digital superpower our kids need, and that's empathy. Why empathy? And can you expand on that?
Well, I think that's so important. I mean, one of the things that parents and educators really worry about is cyberbullying and digital drama. And now we have to worry about things like sextortion. And, it's pretty scary out there when you start talking about those things. But a child who is brought up understanding the importance of empathy and know what it's like to have empathy for a peer or empathy for another who's being the target of cyberbullying or sextortion or whatever, that is so powerful because that child will step in to be an upstander or to tell a trusted adult, or maybe to give comfort to the person who's being the target of one of these terrible behaviors. So I think empathy is just super important to instill in our kids. I mean, remember for a kid who doesn't get it, you can go online and say a mean word to somebody and you don't have the impact of their facial expressions for how they feel. And so you got to have them understand that in one way or another, that there's a real person that could be hurt. And, that's difficult. But what's not difficult is that when you have a whole community of kids who are online and one child happens to see another child being treated cruelly, there's a lot of power in that one kid stepping up to make that one child either feel better or to come to an aid or rescue. So that's why I think empathy is so important. I mean, it's such a cure for so many of the problems that we see online.
You talk about one, success story in terms of empathy of a young person who started an app, something called, I think it was Have Lunch With Us or something like that, or Eat Lunches with Us. Can you talk about that? That was such a wonderful story. Just made me cheer up.
I mean, that was a great one. So one of the lessons that we do is we have kids pretend that if they're going to create an app, what would they create to make the world better? And so I always give them that real world story of a child who either they were always sitting alone at lunch or they felt sorry for people who were sitting at lunch, but they created that app where they could coordinate with other people who to sit with at lunchtime so no one would ever be sitting alone. And I thought, what a simple way to create something that's really wonderful. And the funny thing about that is since I wrote the book, I mean, today there's vibe coding. So nearly anybody, you don't have to have zero coding experience. You don't have to have any engineering experience to make apps these days. So just think about all the really cool things that kids could be making today.
Now, you've talked to a lot of experts and researchers in the field of child psychology and development. What makes kids especially so vulnerable to internet addiction?
Well, first of all, we try not to use the word addiction because, believe it or not, it's not really recognized as a true addiction by the medical community. It's more, there's addictive tendencies, but we don't like to use that word. And I particularly don't because I don't want kids to feel like they have a disease or there's something wrong with them. It's not their fault that they're drawn to these powerful technologies. I mean, it's their little brain against the brains of the most powerful technologists in the world, right? So I don't want them to feel like there's something wrong with them. But you're right. There's a lot of ways that, our tools are, from the iPhone to the laptop, capture and hold on to our attention. So, we want kids to be aware of what those things are that they are kind of powerless against.
Now, is there a balance that we need to find as parents between, on the one hand, restricting and monitoring our children's online presence and then teaching them to monitor themselves?
Yeah, and it's kind of like scaffolding skills. I mean, when they're very young, you want to do as much of it with them as you can. I mean, if you're using technology, sit them on your lap, tell them what you're doing as they get older, point things out, especially now with AI that's literally invisible. If you're interacting with Siri or Alexa, make sure they know that that's a technology tool that you're talking to. It's not a real person. And then as they get a little bit bigger, you give them a little more freedom, but still check in. And it's just, I always tell parents, like, if you're super involved when your children are young, and if you have a lot of curiosity about what they're doing and express that curiosity, you've got an open door to their technological life that will stay hopefully open as they get older and things get scarier or more concerning. Because what you want to do is make your child feel like, hey, if something bad happens to me and I'm a teenager, I know I can go to my parent because I've been talking to them about my technology use my whole life. So it's not brand new. So I think it's so important for parents to just start young, keep talking, be as involved as you can, and give them a longer and longer leash as they get older.
Now, do you advocate unplugging or what some people call technology Sabbaths? And if so, how do we teach our children that discipline?
Well, we have another website called CyberWise, and we have a technology agreement there that parents can download. And I think it's a really good idea for parents to use something like that and to come to mutual agreements with their children on what's appropriate for their family. I mean, every family is different. For some families, it doesn't make sense for them to take that 24-hour break or whatever because they need to have contact with their children. And for other families, that absolutely works. So that's what I would say is within a family decide. But certainly there are times a day when it's smart for every family to unplug. At night, for sure. I tell families to have a place where all the phones go to bed that's not in the bedroom, so you're not tempted to grab it in the middle of the night. Of course, they should be turned off and put away at meal times or family gatherings or when there's somebody important in front of you. So those are just kind of no-brainers. But I do always point back to that technology agreement and have families come to those agreements and have discussions about that amongst themselves.
How has your curriculum been received in the educational community?
Well, it's funny, it started out kind of by accident, as I explained, and pretty quickly it got picked up by schools in California, specifically charter schools, because they're really, they're able to make quick decisions on curriculum. It's harder for a public school. But as we've gone along in the last 15 years, we're in more and more different kinds of schools. We're in public schools now, and charter schools, and Waldorf schools, and Montessori schools, and Catholic schools. So it's growing. And this year we're seeing kind of a renewed interest in it because it is teacher-led, it's face-to-face. And I think right now, because there's kind of this yearning of something that's real and human, instead of putting kids in front of a computer to learn digital literacy, I think the educational community is realizing that this is too important to be left to a computer. We need an adult in the room to explain it to kids and have discussions with them because, there's questions and you want to talk about it. We're all kind of figuring it out together. So that's been really great for our curriculum because I think we're unique in the fact that we are teacher-led, human-delivered, not on a computer.
So we're not just telling kids, here, watch this video, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
Right. I mean, every lesson has an activity. So the kids are doing something together to really underscore whatever it is we just taught them.
Let's move to the topic of media literacy. First of all, what do you mean by media literacy?
Well, the way we define media literacy, it's the learning the ability to use and decode and understand all forms of media. And the way we address it is in our middle school program, we start with digital citizenship, which is becoming a good citizen of the digital world. And then we move to information and AI literacy, which is learning about the tools and how they work and how to get information. And then we move on in 8th grade to media literacy, which is being like a critical analyzer of the media that you see. So it's kind of a progression with media literacy being the last step.
Now, on that topic, fake news is obviously epidemic right now and highly toxic to us as human beings, but also to our in the political sphere, to our republic. How do we teach our children to distinguish truth from fiction online? And what skills will they need?
First of all, so important. I mean, I read a statistic this morning, something like 60% of the stuff we're seeing online right now is not even true. So as an adult, we're duped all the time, and we absolutely need to teach our kids the steps on how to analyze online information to figure out if it's true or not. We need to teach them really about images. I mean, images today, it's almost impossible to tell if something's true or not. So to see if something's AI generated or created by a person, I mean, all of that stuff is critical. So we actually don't leave that till 8th grade. We address it in our 4th and 5th grade lessons. We have a couple of cute little lessons. Is it real or not? Is that a true picture? Things like that. And then we go pretty deep with the 8th graders, giving them actually the steps to take to analyze media messages to determine the veracity of them.
Now, you have developed something called the CRAP test, the CRAP test.
Oh, you know
Can you
what?
talk about
I've
that?
changed from that. So that's an interesting question because that's in my book. And that was actually kind of the standard that we used back then to analyze media information. And that has actually been changed. And so we quickly adapted our curriculum to adjust to those changes. And that was based on the work of the Stanford History Group, which I believe you're going to be speaking with soon. And they came up with 3 questions that you should ask yourself when you see misinformation that you think may be false. And so we've adapted our curriculum to align with their 3 questions.
Okay. What are those questions, if you don't mind?
The first one is you ask who created this. I mean, that's a no-brainer. Like if you see an article, you look up the author and see, is this a person who has credentials or who knows something about this topic, or is just a random blogger?
Right.
And then you go down and you read those, do they cite any research? Is it verified research? Is it real research? And then number 3, you see what other people say about the article or the author. So pretty simple. I mean, I do that all the time, and it takes a second. You can usually figure out if something's true or not just by number 1.
Right.
And you can do the same thing with images, who took the image, and find out if it's, kind of go down the rabbit hole and figure out if it's really a real image or if it has been altered or not. So, you can use those same skills in all kinds of ways online.
What encourages you as a researcher and as an educator? Can you talk about some of the good or positive things that you see happening with kids, either with this training or just online in general?
I mean, what keeps me going is I see its impact. I see how kids need very little guidance. They need a few lessons. They need a help here and there, and they're going to figure this stuff out. But going into it blind is no way to go. Educating kids on all these different facets, from misinformation that we just talked about, from cyberbullying, from sextortion, for, on and on. Digital literacy is a huge, gigantic thing. There's a lot of topics to cover. But what keeps me going is how quickly kids grasp it. They love to talk about this stuff. They love it. It's like part of their everyday life. So they completely come to these lessons with an open mind and eager to, eat up whatever it is we're going to talk about. And then I see them apply what they've learned in really wonderful ways. And so I think, gosh, almost more than any other subject, this is going to make an impact on their future life. I love to share this story. So I was teaching an 8th grade lesson on media literacy, and a girl in the class turned to another girl and said, I don't understand why we have algebra 5 days a week and we only have cyber civics once a week. I'm going to use this every single day in my life. I thought, that's such a great quote.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so true.
It does. Now, are you able to keep contact with some of your past students and how they're using what they learn in their, whether it's college or, job training or whatever?
Well, in my endnotes in my book, I actually did have a research assistant that tracked down some students I had 10 years earlier to see what had really stuck with them. And it was funny because with all of the students, I think there were 6 of them that she interviewed, 2 things stuck the most. Number 1, they were all able to put their devices down and walk away and have time away. Like they had developed that quality. And I thought that was wonderful that they could all still say that they were able to do that. Number 2 is they were super mindful of their digital reputations. They understood its impact and they were very careful with it as they were going out and getting careers and jobs and that kind of thing. So I was really happy that those were the 2 lessons they remembered.
Now we've been talking with Diane Graber, the author of Raising Humans in a Digital World, and she's also the developer of the Cyber Civics curriculum, currently being used in schools across the country as well as internationally. Diane Graber, thank you so much for making time for us.
Oh, thank you so much for asking me. I love it that you are spending time talking about this topic.
Yeah, it's one that we'll return to frequently, I hope. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Diana's book, Raising Humans in a Digital World, is available on Amazon.com as well as on other websites where good books are sold. It's also available through her websites, cyberwise.org, that's C-Y-B-E-R, wise, W-I-S-E.org, and dianagraber.com, DIANAGRABER.com. And both those websites you can see on our webpage. I've posted them there. And if you're a parent and you're looking to educate yourself as to how you can be a better parent as in terms of nurturing your child to become a good cyber citizen, CyberWise is a great resource for you. If you're an educator and you're interested in Diana's curriculum for your school or would like more information, cybercivics.com is a website to check it out. Cybercivics, C-Y-B-E-R, C-I-V-I-C-S.com. And again, that website will be posted on our webpage. Thank you again for tuning in. This is S.J. Munson signing out.